Assistant.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Live Company Group PLC investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Just please simply type in your questions at any time and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during today's meeting. However, the company review all questions submitted today and publish responses where that is appropriate to do so. Before we begin, we would like to submit the following poll, and as usual, I'm sure the company will be most grateful for your participation. And I'd now like to hand over to David Secretariat, Chairman. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Before we sort of get into the presentation, I'd just like to say thank you for coming. There have been some questions, Sarah, if you were able to just explain yesterday's RNS, I think that might be helpful.
Of course. So we made an announcement, thanks David, we made an announcement yesterday which was that we will organise a GM, and that's for the approval of the warrants of our previous capital raisers, but also gives us the opportunity, should any of our warrant holders who have supported us really well with throughout the last couple of years, if they would like to exercise, and let's all remember that that's money into the company, that they have the opportunity to do so. So we have enough headroom to do so. So it's not an intention to issue, it's an intention to make good for our really supportive shareholders and warrant holders. So just to provide that clarification to all of you on yesterday's announcement. Thank you. Back to you, David.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I think we're going to use this presentation in the form, it will give you an update of where we are. Obviously, if you've got questions, please feel free to ask them after the presentation. So can we turn the slides? Obviously, this is Live Company. To remind everybody, Live Company basically has 4 divisions. We have the Brick Live division, which is toy-based brick tours, shows, and consumer kits. We have a division which is basically linked to kpop.flex, and the current KPE, which we own 50% of, is the promoter of the Frankfurt show, and that's taking place in 10 days' time. Then we also have the Live Company Sports and Entertainment, which is the basically it encompasses what we're doing in South Africa currently, but we look forward to building that up beyond South Africa. And then we have a minority investment in Start Art Global, which is a physical and curated digital art platform. So if we go on, move on to the next page. This is an introduction on kpop.flex. It's the brand of a concert which is taking place in Frankfurt. It's approximately 5 hours, 3 hours of which, it's 5 hours a day, 3 hours of which is K-pop performances. The concert dates are multiple dates, usually a Saturday and Sunday. This year is both Saturday and Sunday. Originally started on one day, but now is 2 days. And it's at a stadium in Frankfurt, which is called the Deutsche Bank Park. And obviously going forward, if we do further events, they will be at similar status stadiums. We have in our current agreement with SBS, the broadcaster in Korea, there's an obligation to present 2 S artists and 5 A-level artists from an agreed list. If we move on to the next page, the actual event that's coming up, there are 7 groups performing on the 14th, and they are G Idol, Kai, Mamamoo, NCT Dream, and N-Hyphen and AB6. And then there's the repeat performances by some of these people on the Sunday, but there's 8 groups in total, and there's 2 different companies, or 2 groups there, Monster X, Oneus, and Dreamcatcher. So that's 3 additional bands. Ticket sales as we speak to date are 64,000 today, 43,000 of which are on the Saturday, and 21,000 are on the 15th. We are about to launch a significant promotion going up to the event, and I expect the total amount to be closer to 70,000 when we get to the actual event. 10% of the tickets have been sold to VIP tickets, and tickets have been sold to fans in over 60 different countries, although 60% of the tickets have been sold to German-speaking countries. So if we move on to the next page. Now, we made an announcement this sort of morning, which some of you will have seen, to remind you our revenue comes in 3 or 4 forms. First of all, we get a percentage of the ticket revenue once the actual costs have been recouped. And so therefore we get actually 40% of the ticket revenue over and above the spend to date. And that's obviously going to be quite significant, not the spend, but the amount that we receive. We also get the revenue from sponsorship, and we also get revenue from merchandising. And in addition, we get revenue from streaming, and that's the latest thing we've announced. So we're going to go through a few details here to try and explain how it all works. We've partnered with a company called Doors, which is a Swedish-based company, for our streaming this year. And basically going forward, we will be looking at running more than one festival, and they will be divided into an A level, which will be not live streamed, but streamed within 10 days of the performance, because SBS, the broadcast partner, will be doing the same in Korea as a broadcast, and B level concerts, which will be streamed live, which are immediate, obviously, at the same time. In addition to that, we are putting together streaming packages, which are basically behind the scenes with individual artists. And that's something that I believe is going to be more important as we go further forward. Doors is a cutting-edge digital live platform enabling artists to create premium interactive and monetize experience for their fans and venues within specific boundaries. Doors has partnered with NEP Creative Technology across the globe to provide an unparalleled live stream experience. NEP is probably one of the world's best class production houses. It's known best for the work that it does on the Olympics, working with NBC, and also the World Cup. And they are also a partner to SBS. So if we were to choose to stream a future an event live, it will be NEP's production house that will be doing the production. Next page. I'm going to hand this over to you, Nicola.
Yep, good idea. Okay, so as you can see here, David alluded on the previous slide to the fact that there's A and B concerts. If you look at this, on the right-hand side of the slide, you will see the format that is going to be used for the current show in Frankfurt. In other words, the event takes place, which is filmed by SBS. 14 days later, you have the delayed live stream of the performance. In other words, it's the full format, all the hours, not broken down and not actually into the individual performances. So the only streaming available for this particular Frankfurt concert will be the full long format. However, going forwards, if you look on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see where it's kpop.flex. There will be 2 different ways that we will be monetizing the streaming. On the left side, you'll see the long form full festival. So people will purchase a ticket to see the entire show, the entire festival, 2 days, 1 day, etc. They will be live, near live, and global. You will also, as David had mentioned previously, be able to purchase solely individual performances. So for example, especially in the K-pop genre, a lot of fans are super fans of one particular group. So in this way, they can purchase a package that enables them to only see that particular group that they're the super fan of. If you would like to move across to the next slide, please. Okay, this is just a bit of an explanation on Doors themselves, some comments on the right from people who've used them. They cover everything from the tokenized ticketing and merchandise sales. Those merchandise, by the way, is virtual and physical. Then you have rights clearance, VAT payaway, and localization to high definition digital live broadcast, real-time audience engagement, and data capture. The next slide, please. So this is, let me just go through this slightly more in this case. So as you see on the left, it's geosensitive and tokenized ticketing. So in other words, they can block, for example, we will not be selling streaming of this particular Frankfurt show to Korean-based customers. So they are able to do the geo blocking. They do it on a number of different ways. For example, your credit card, where that credit card is, where you actually did the booking from, etc. The global price and the tokenized ticketing simply means that, like with an NFT, it's got that built-in security, so nobody else could replicate your actual ticket. Global price harmonization, what it means, for example, if you are based in South Africa, your ticket for this particular Frankfurt show might be the equivalent of $7, but if you're in Switzerland, it could be $18. So the more wealthy the country, the higher the ticket price will be in relation. On the performance rights and clearances, they handle all of that. We do not have to get involved in that. Same with the automated global tax reporting. The clustered and moderated chat rooms and user-generated chat rooms are probably one of my favorite features that Doors enables. What it means is that, say, I'm a Monster X fan and I want to only watch the streaming with other Monster X fans. So I go into a chat room with like-minded people, if you want to call that, so that we can constantly chat, if we wish, throughout the streaming to one another. You can also do user-generated chat rooms whereby, say, I wanted to watch it with a friend of mine who lives in New York. The two of us can actually create our own chat room and just watch it together and be able to converse with one another about the experience. The remarkable quality built to scale point is actually another quite interesting feature on it. So at the moment, you can have, without scaling up, 1 million concurrent viewers of our live stream. However, no matter what your device is, so if you are looking on your cell phone and you move away from a strong Wi-Fi, it will downscale the HD, etc. of it so that you can still see it. And as you move into a stronger Wi-Fi area, it will then increase the visibility of it, increase it to make it sort of sharper, etc. So you get that more definition, and the higher quality, the better your internet and your devices. So it's got intelligence built in to read the device and to read the quality of it. It supports multiple languages. In the case of this particular event in Frankfurt, we are going, just based on who's purchased tickets, we are doing in French, German, Italian, Portuguese, Spanish, and English. The access to fan data, but GDPR compliant. When a person goes onto it, they will have 2 boxes that they need to tick. The first one is that they have to say yes to enable us to be able to contact them concerning just the tickets themselves and the purchase of the tickets and the things around that. Then there is a second box that they can tick, which allows us to keep them updated on any Kpop.flex brand going forwards. And this data, unlike with most other sort of channels, you wouldn't get the data given to you. Ticketmaster, for example, doesn't give you that data, but we will get it from Doors. As far as the merchandising, virtual and physical, initially we are beginning with just the actual physical merchandise, which you guys have seen, and we'll show you further along in this presentation some examples. The virtual merchandise is something we plan on building up on the future. And that will include things like an NFT of a moment at the concert. It would be a multiples of sort of screen grabs of certain moments, little bits of video from it that then only you can purchase. So again, it just means that it's another potential revenue stream from this. I think we can move to the next slide. David, would you like me to carry on merchandise? Yes. Or would you like? Yep. Okay. From the merchandise base, if you do look online at the moment, you will see a limited amount of merchandise. We have, however, got another 20 to 30 items, which will be unveiled at the Frankfurt concert. There are a lot of them that are specific to the event and others that are more generic. Most of these specific to the event include the full lineup of the artists on the back. In order to create the merchandise line, we have partnered with Nylon Merchandising. Nylon do At Ease at the moment. They are another K-pop group, and they have recently just done a tour of the United States where they did it. But they have a very, very strong history of creating merchandise lines for bands, groups, companies, etc. We can
Nicola,
go.
sorry to interrupt. Is it worth just mentioning that the merchandising agreement has a minimum amount guaranteed?
No,
Yes.
perhaps I could go into that. Obviously, we haven't really shared to date the full details, but I'm happy to now share those details. Obviously, normally when you enter into partnership with a company, it's a brand that's already recognized. So if you were Led Zeppelin or a band, you would obviously demand a guarantee. K-pop.flex is as you know, a brand that was only really unveiled in late December. So it's basically has no history other than what we've made for it. We had a bidding process for the merchandising, and apart from the fact that we liked the designs and the way of doing business from Nylon, they agreed to pay us a minimum guarantee of just under $500,000, and basically that was paid to us, and it's then offset obviously against what they potentially sell. But the reality is that has given us a really good start to start working with them. We have an agreement to work with them to the end of this year, and obviously we are going to review the results very carefully, but to date we're very happy with what Nylon have done.
Okay. Just to carry on the Nylon front, we approve all designs and work with them on the designs for the merchandise. They will design, show, and territory-specific merchandise. Everything we try to produce as locally as possible. The merchandise will be sold at various locations around the stadium during the fan festival area, including inside the stadium, and there will be various walkers who will move around to actually sell particular smaller items of merchandise so that people don't need to go somewhere. We will come to them. We can move to the next slide, please. This was just some of the examples of things. We will, of course, have the light stick. We will have tote bags. We have caps, hoodies, T-shirts, tank tops, you name it. There's a wide variety of them. We can move to the next slide.
I think we can also say, Nicola, that as I suspected, once we started announcing what we're going to do, we got approached by individual bands, and we are now, I think it's 3 bands, we will be selling their merchandise as well. I've just returned from Korea, which it's fair to say I had not been for 2.5 years. I hadn't met my member of staff there for 2.5 years. So it was very nice to go back to Korea. And K-pop.flex has a tremendously positive aura around it. And we've already started discussing for future festivals that all of the various bands will be much more cooperative and will be keen to sell their own merchandise. This is obviously additional benefit to us. So the reality, I think it's like the streaming that we referred to earlier, that it's the first run out of K-pop.flex, and a lot of the final discussions had to involve people face to face. And we've literally only been able to do that 10 days ago. But my feedback from going to Korea was this huge potential. And I've already booked to go back at the end of May and in June, etc. So we are really developing now things in a much faster and clearer way. Perhaps we could, Nicola, you could take us through the Korea Festival.
Yep, sure. From the Korean Festival side, outside, the Korea Festival opens. When the gates are open, people will have several hours. The fans will have several hours to go and enjoy an immersive Korean experience. You cannot gain access to the Korean Fest unless you have a ticket for the actual show. They are going to do traditional fashion show. There will be non-verbal performances. We've also got a dance competition to which we've had hundreds of entries from around the world to compete, and then the top ones will obviously show themselves. There will also be sort of flash mobs that will take place, lots of Korean food festivals, the b-boy performances, and various taekwondo and various other Korean specific cultural experiences. We can move on.
This is, by the way, is entirely funded by the Korean Tourist Organization, KTO, and is very important because it's seen that the government of Korea, who, as you know, are very, very strongly behind the so-called K-wave, are very supportive of this festival. And so it's a first for us, a first for them, and I think it's going to be very successful for the fans.
Okay, next slide, please. So this is just an example at the actual Deutsche Bank Park Stadium of a particular sort of side event that took place. But the following slide, if we can please move to that, Mark. The next slide. Thank you. This is the exact placement that we will be doing the Korea Festival. The reasoning for this is that the other 3 pitches used by the Frankfurt football team, we cannot touch. On this one, it is an astroturfed pitch, so we are able to set up there. As you can see on the right-hand side, there will be a stage where the performances will take place, and then you will have various of the Snow Peak marquees individually dotted that will go all the way down the long walkway and around the actual activity zone there. We can move on.
We move into Brick Live, which is, we'll just go through some of the things we're doing there. So,
next slide.
So, do you want to talk through this?
Sure. What I can tell you is that we have got the number of confirmed shows has moved up slightly out. So the reserved are actually moving into the confirmed section. We have just finishing building an entire new tour. It's another Brickosaurus tour. We are doing more additional kits. We have built several retail kits specifically for our event that takes place in August that I will discuss in a little while with you. And we are continuing to do a lot of corporate kit builds as well. Our e-commerce site is up and running and everything is geared up ready for Battersea Park in August. Now, if we can move to the next slide. This is what we've chosen as sort of our logo and look and feel for Brick Live in the park. We can move to the next one. So here you go. On the left-hand side there, you'll see an advert that we've placed in the Primary Times, which is one of the leading circulations that are handed out to students in primary school in the United Kingdom. We obviously focused on the London and Southwest London area specifically. And the event will take place at the Evolution Centre in Battersea Park from August 20th to 29th this year. There are 2 shows or 2 experience entry times per day. They are 3 hours each. And it's pretty much if you can look on the map at the bottom, you'll see there's a lot of things, interactive stuff for the kids to do, as well as looking at the statues. There are the brick pits. There is the brick wall. There will also be inflatable obstacle courses and other things to allow the children to not only experience the bricks, but to burn off a little bit of that extra energy. And then there's catering for the mothers and fathers who need that little bit cup of tea to get through it. We will, of course, adhere to anything, safety protocols, etc. at the time. We have gone on sale for tickets. We did so earlier than we planned. We intended to originally go on sale only in May, but we did start earlier, and we have now, as of May 1st, begun a small digital media spend in order to go ahead and promote the event. Obviously, all of our research and data shows that people are less likely with children that age to purchase too far in advance. So we do anticipate that July and the beginning of August will actually be the bulk of the ticket sales. But again, we are hoping to get quite a few in advance. And this will be our first show since the beginning of COVID, I understand. Is that correct, David?
Yes, as you know, we ran a lot of shows around the world. And so this is the first comeback to allow kids to touch, feel, and do whatever. I can say without giving full details that us doing this has led to other shows going to happen during the 2022 year.
Yep.
So we'll obviously be keeping you updated on those as and when they're signed and concluded. So next, now this is Start. We've made quite a lot of progress on Start in terms of the actual physical shows. We ran a physical show earlier this year in Cape Town. this, I suppose, we're announcing. I suppose, Sarah, we should actually be doing this as an RNS, but we have just agreed the terms for a second start art fair in Seoul this August. And for those who know their art, you will know that there's a big fair that takes place in London called Frieze, and we are at the same time as Frieze. We're like a boutique version of Frieze, and Frieze has chosen to launch in Asia in Seoul, and they will be doing it during this time. And so we've decided to follow suit and launch our own art fair. Obviously, our existing art fair is between the 13th and 16th of October, and we're looking to do another Start Plus in London. Start Plus, I will remind you, is a kind of pop-up show based around some artists. So if we move forward to the next page.
Okay, I'll take this one. So this was Start Plus in Cape Town. It was a very successful event. We found local South African young artists that were so emerging that they literally were just out of school and nobody had seen their works, and two of them, no one had seen their works before. We managed to give them an opportunity to showcase them to the rest of the world. There was a lot of publicity around it. This is an article in the Art Times on it. There were various other media publications too. The picture that you see in the bottom shows it's Gallery 131, a gallery which is on the foreshore area in Cape Town. And we did this in partnership with the gallery. Upstairs, the zone downstairs that you see there was just our artists, which included Mary Jordan, who is a several-time exhibitor at Start Art Fair in London. And then upstairs within the same building was the actual art, the gallery owners displayed some of the more successful and established South African artists. But everything went very, very well, and it lasted 5 days. We can move to the next slide.
Now, this is the London Art Fair. Again, this has not been announced. It's due to be announced in the next week. We've just signed with Martin Miller's Gin a small sponsorship for an emerging art prize based on London artists. Most of the, as we do every year, most of the actual art booths have been sold, and there'll be specific curated shows within the show, and you've got a list there. So let's move to the next slide.
Can we go on this one about the ghost curation or not?
Yeah, for those who are interested, one of the things that we are doing both in Seoul and in London is the ability to create a space where not everybody can afford to come from around the world, although we have over 20 countries represented. So we're offering what we call a ghost curation, which is the chance for artists that were related to Start on our platform to basically have their work exhibited, obviously for a fee, and then we then help them sell it. We think that's going to be very successful going forward. It's pretty much oversubscribed here in London, and we will be launching next week something similar in Seoul for young Korean artists.
So what happens with it is that our team have several iPads in hand, and the artists, wherever they are in the world, are on standby during the operating hours of the show. And should anybody come that shows a serious interest in that particular artwork or wishes to speak to the artist themselves or the gallery directly, our team enables them to do so through their iPads.
Okay, next. This is basically an update on our sports division. Obviously, the cycle tour has taken place during the period, and obviously that was very successful. We've also unveiled, if you remember from our last presentation, the Formula E track in Cape Town, which has had fantastic response. I think over the last weekend, we started our relationship with Pick and Pay, where we managed for them a series of wine festivals, and all the work has now been agreed for the ocean race stopover in Cape Town, which is in February next year. So I think the next slide is basically some images there. You'll see something from the art. There is Eddie and Marie Jordan, if you're into Formula One, and basically there is a Formula E image, and this is actually from last weekend, from the wine festival, and you see the track that is going to be utilised in February next year in Cape Town.
And that's it, I think.
That's great. Thank you, David. Nicola, thank you very much indeed for updating investors this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab situated.
Can I just say one thing, if I may? And the purpose of doing these webinars is to, it's very difficult when you're a public company what you can and cannot say, but to basically give as up-to-date information as possible to our fellow shareholders. What I can say is that I know that I've basically said, look, I can't answer questions as an individual, but I will try every month to answer any questions that you have. We are so busy in developing our various projects, particularly at Kpop.flex, that one is almost permanently inside. So it makes it very difficult for us as management to share that information. One thing I would like to announce today, however, is I guess we're a sort of nice content-based business, and I would like to invite as many shareholders who want to come, obviously within the compliance rules that are very strict on AIM, to visit our events. I know that certain of the people on this call today are coming to Frankfurt and to see things, and I'm sure they are part of shareholder groups and will explain live from the venue. If anybody who hasn't decided to come would like to come to Frankfurt, you'd be more than welcome. And of course, our next event, which I think will be attractive to those who live in the UK, is the Brick Live in the Park, and particularly your kids. And we'd like to see as many of you as want to be part of that. Please just let us know, and we will be delighted if you go through Sarah to basically not only meet you in person, but meet your kids as well, I guess. So now let's go to the questions.
Okay, well, here we go. In no particular order, I may just actually take them in the order that they came in, if that's okay with you, David. The first one reads as follows: Brick Live still a focus of the group, and are we building new sets?
That's very simple. Yes, it is a focus of the group. Obviously, as you can see, we will have a lot of events this year. We're very happy to be doing our first, if you like, show, already planned in August. We've just completed, in fact, one of our shareholders wrote to us, they went to Marwell Zoo and saw the dinosaur set that's at Marwell Zoo. That's obviously our most recent completion. We have another major tour in sight to complete this year. And as Nicola explained, we are building a lot of kits. We are beginning to work towards the full opening of the e-commerce site. So we're as active as we can be, given that, during the pandemic, we lost some of our builders, obviously for obvious reasons, but we have retained a core staff and will be looking to build and to do new projects during 2022 and 23.
Thank you, David. This is one of the pre-submitted questions that we received, which reads as follows: what is the strategy for the company over the next 3 to 5 years? Acquisition, divestiture, or growth, or a combination? How do you see this strategy creating shareholder value? And the final comment was, David has always pointed towards a sale of the company. Is this still the overall intent?
Well, if we start at the beginning, we've got clearly now 4 different divisions, each one of which is profitable. And we need to build upon those divisions. That, if you like, the last out of the box has been the Kpop.flex. There are many, many opportunities in that field, and clearly it's well known that we wish to basically launch similar festivals in different cities. So that's obviously got a lot of management's attention right now. In terms of shareholder value, we've seen a very good growth since the beginning of this year. I basically think it's just sort of beginning, because I believe as we build our various assets and various profit lines, the value of the company will obviously grow, and the shareholder value will obviously mirror that. I think sentiment has returned from us being a kind of out of work of events company during the pandemic to being quite I think our broker described us the other day as a cool company, which I guess is a compliment. And in terms of shareholder value, obviously that's what I work for all the time, being a significant shareholder. And I do genuinely think that shareholder value will increase. The question about selling something, I think you have to wait till we get there. I think obviously we've got attractive pieces of the business, and I would be not telling the truth if I have not said that people have approached us to say, how do we partner with you? What do we do? I think it's all a bit too early, and I think we need to build our business, build our profit line, build our shareholder value. But ultimately, as we build that value, obviously opportunities will arise. So last time I said this 4 years ago, I got sort of hung for saying what I was really thinking. So I'd rather not say what I'm thinking, but I can't deny that is a possibility.
That's great. Thank you. Next couple of questions come from David. So thank you, David, for your questions. The first one, are talks on another concert proceeding well?
Yes, they are. And suffice it to say, I think they're not just proceeding, they're sort of getting to their final stages. And I believe that as shareholders, you will see announcements in due course.
He follows up with, do KPE get any streaming revenue, or is it all 60% for LVCG?
Well, this particular show, all of the revenue goes from our perspective to Live Company. Going forward, that obviously we need to discuss exactly who does what and where it goes. The Doors relationship is like anything you start with somebody, is specifically for Frankfurt, but the contract we've signed allows us to extend. I must say that I'm very impressed with their work to date. I'm very impressed with their attitude. One of their members accompanied me to Korea last week, and we started a lot of very interesting conversations. So it's something that I think it's important to understand. When we signed the initial contract or negotiated the initial contract, the rights that are basically enshrined in Frankfurt now are basically for the show that is shot by SBS. Learning as we've gone along, and specifically working with Doors, I personally have understood the importance of these sort of individual artists' chats, interviews, what they're wearing, what they want to do, what there's there. It's a kind of money can't buy information. And I believe these packages that will be produced as we go forward will throw off considerable value. And really working with Doors, they have a very, very strong research capacity. We've basically been out there questioning fans, questioning the K-pop industry, and we now have a very good understanding of what actually people do want. So as we negotiate with artists in the future, both in Frankfurt and other locations, we will be ensuring that we have a more full set of rights to utilize in the streaming.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed. Now, turning to Liam's question, he asks, the Doors contract is only for live streaming. Are there any plans to be able to do post-event streaming? Doors only do live streaming.
No. As you see, what we're doing in Frankfurt is exactly that. We call it as live, near live, whatever you want to call it. Now, obviously, the Korean broadcast, which goes out on the 8:30 on the 28th of May, will be a serious hit in Korea. Our contract allows us only to sell outside Korea, which is obvious, and therefore we didn't want to disrupt what they will be showing in Korea. So we've agreed to contemporaneously stream it with their launch of their broadcast. We also have the right to do things, I think it's 24 months afterwards. So as we go from show to show, it makes an obvious sense to create series of packages that will be streamed continually. So our whole strategy in the streaming is to, as Nicola showed in her chart earlier, is to look at various formats of streaming.
There are a number of questions around streaming. I don't want to miss any out, and I don't want to duplicate them. So forgive me if I'm asking you some of the same. But David asks, when will streaming income be received? And what are the forecast numbers for ticket sales for streaming? A range will suffice if that's at all possible.
As you would appreciate, I can't give you forecasts at this current time. We will obviously learn a lot from what we do. The tickets are on sale. The revenue will come to us around the time of the streaming, so towards the end of the month. We will be working on a strategy that takes us through the year and involves other shows and Frankfurt next year. So it's a sort of continual process. And as I've just tried to explain, going forward, our access to rights will improve exponentially. So I see it as a growing revenue stream for us. And obviously, depending on the content that you have, the pricing is obviously reflected to that. And it would be anywhere between a $12 ticket and a $25 ticket. So obviously we will be, I think I've mentioned this several times, we will be putting together a research note that will go out sometime in June to coincide with the accounts from last year that go out. And in there will be full detail of not just factually what we've actually done, but what we see the projections of the streaming to be. And they will be worked very closely with information that we have with Doors.
Thanks, David. Turning to marketing, there's a few questions around marketing, one from Ian and another one from Martin. So thank you both for your questions. Who's going to do the marketing for the streaming? It needs to go viral on social media, low cost, but needs a skilled player. And Martin asks, what marketing will Doors do for the streaming?
Oh, so I could hand that to you, Nicola.
We've just lost Nicola, so maybe I can come back to those.
No, I'm very happy to tell you.
I can do that one, David, because I've been looking at that. So they are responsible for all marketing. It comes under their cost, and obviously they're extremely experienced in this area and have a very comprehensive and extensive digital marketing campaign that they will adopt for K-pop Flex. I don't know, David, if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, I think it's a sort of building process. I'm a big fan in the idea of building a fan community, and between now and Christmas, opening a much wider community than we've obviously got on our existing website. And Doors are particularly capable at data collection, and I was very impressed in our conversations with them. So, excuse me, I believe that working with them, we will be building significant permanent data collection abilities. So what we're going to do now is obviously market to our initial fans, market to other K-pop brands, market to sites that belong to artists, etc. But we only finalized the final stuff in Korea last week. I know a lot of people have been going, well, why haven't you announced anything? So I wanted to announce it as quick as possible. And obviously, we've got a huge amount of work to do between now and the festival. So I hope that answers some of your questions. So what's next?
Next is all around, I guess, value of the brand. Questions from Richard and Jack. Again, thank you to you both. How big can the K-pop Flex brand become? And how much do you think the K-pop Flex could be worth?
Well, that's an interesting question. Obviously, my vision and my ambition is to build the brand in as many places as possible on a worldwide basis. Obviously, we've got to go step by step, and obviously the brand will be built around concerts that get, or festivals that get announced, because obviously that gives a huge fillip to the brand in itself. I've just alluded to the fact that I would like to see the K-pop.flex brand be enlarged in terms of its community base, and so you're going beyond just the festivals we're building. I think the valuation, that will be very interesting. I have my own views, but the real question, and this goes back to the earlier point that was asked of me about selling something, I believe that the division of K-pop.flex, if you like, is significantly valuable, and obviously will have throw-off value on the value to Live Company. My whole mission on all of your behalves is to ensure that as much value comes back to you, the shareholders, in Live Company. And obviously, in an extreme case, that would see multiple times of the value that is currently there. So are we still on here? Hello?
Yep,
Yep,
sorry.
we're still here.
Yeah, we're
Get
still
into the
here.
next ones.
I was just looking at the next question to ask you because you get asked so many. I'm trying to make sure I don't keep asking you the same thing. So Jamie asks, is the plan still to have 2 to 3 festivals this year?
Well, currently we're in discussion to potentially do 2/3, and we're in discussion to do potentially anywhere between 4 and 8 in 2023.
Thank you. Neil asks, I appreciate that you can't spell it out in black and white, but when will shareholders be able to attribute the value of all the K-pop Flex elements? For example, post-Frankfurt, would it be practical for some form of guidance to be issued?
Well, I think the first thing is we have to basically do the I have no idea how many t-shirts we're going to sell and this and that and the other. I have ideas, but we have to see how Frankfurt works. We will be putting together thorough research, and I think, Sarah, the idea is to do that during the month of June, which will take into account the realities of Frankfurt, but also the realities of other shows that we will hopefully have announced by then, and basically we will have learned a lot more since we started this journey. Because originally, when we started it, if you remember, Live Company committed to a certain sum of money to the rights purchases along with PK Events. I don't expect that we will be doing that in future because, frankly, why should we? And at the end of the day, people are approaching us, and I believe that the ultimate, if you like, calculation of profit ability for Live Company will become clear to us in June. And obviously, the other thing that's important is this is the first show. Now, some of you may remember that in my past, I was part of a Live Nation. I had a joint venture with Live Nation. The words in Live Nation for festivals is that no festival that they ever ran or built broke even / made a small profit until year 3. Now, that is not the case with ourselves. So we've kind of broken the mold. And so I think that, I think, Neil, you need to wait until the independent researcher has asked the questions, been given the answers, and is able to put together projections, say, for at least 2004.
Thank you, David. Andrew asks a couple of questions, and I think, Andrew, we may have touched on the marketing one. So if I may, I'll just revert back to the previous answer that David gave. But your other question, in a previous meeting, it was announced that K-pop Flex light sticks and K-pop Flex plushies with their tiger and bunny mascot will be available. Will these be sold at the venue only, or will they be also sold via the online shop?
Well, I think, Nicola, they're sold in both, right?
We're still without Nicola. So, Sarah, I mean, again,
I can tell you the light sticks was a real challenge. The fact we've got light sticks made, because a lot of them are made in China, the fact we've got them at all within 3 months is I wouldn't say the word a miracle, but it's a very good thing to have done. By the time we get to our next show, wherever that is, the light sticks will be much more sophisticated. They will be able to attune to the music, as if any of you have been to a BTS, you'd see that. So obviously light sticks were very important. Plushes, I must admit, I was blown away with what I saw in Korea about the appetite for these kind of things. And yes, they will be on site. And yes, I'm sure they will be online. But it is all about time. I go back to our shareholders to remind them that we announced this in December at the end of. And since then, we would have sold an amazing amount of tickets. We would have basically set up a streaming system. We would have basically developed a whole merchandising program, and at the same time begun and possibly finalized venues in different markets around the world. And that's only in the last 4 months. So things like merchandise, you've got to be simple on day one because you can't actually achieve what you might want to do. So the question is, we've done everything. I think the Koreans were taken aback at the speed of how we've managed to achieve this. And Koreans are pretty speedy people, and they were very impressed by what we've achieved. So I'm also very proud of the people who've worked so hard to do that. I would remind shareholders that during the pandemic, we released a lot of people, over £1.25 million worth of staff, and then we suddenly brought into a new project. So people are working on multiple projects, and we're severely understaffed. But that's like any startup, what people are going through.
Thank you. I think the final question that we've got ready for you here, David, if I may, for the second day of K-pop Flex, there's still many tickets left. What are you doing to plan in terms of selling those?
Well, as a result of my visit to Korea, we have managed to persuade the individual artists to release new promotions, of which I think 3 have been received in the last couple of days. They will be going out next week, and they are specifically Frankfurt-driven promotions by bands. And I think we believe that in the last week, there'll be quite a lot of potential ticket buyers. I think that if we had run as we will do in future, obviously the 2 days together, the marketing, it would have been easier. I think the other question there was a huge amount of skepticism about whether the stadiums would be indeed open. We obviously kept in touch with the different lender and particularly Frankfurt, and were confident that they would. But it's only, I think this week is West Ham returning to Frankfurt. It's only now in the last sort of 40 days that these stadiums are basically open to full capacity. We live in England, and we know we've been well ahead in that effect. So a lot of people have been nervous and this and that and the other. So I am absolutely certain we will do more tickets. And I know that going forward, when we mark it as a dual weekend, it will be considerably easier to do so. We already worked out the date for next year, which will be mid-June, and that date will be announced during Frankfurt.
That's great, David. As usual, very generous with your time. And I think we've addressed pretty much all the questions we have from investors on today's call. And if we do receive any more, obviously we make those available to you after today's meeting. I know, David, investor feedback is particularly important. I know you find that very valuable, and I'll shortly redirect investors to provide you with their thoughts and expectations. But before doing so, I wondered if I may, David, just ask you for a few closing comments.
Well, yes. I mean, I'm very pleased that we had this meeting today, because I know that a lot of people have wanted to ask questions. We will be continuing with the webinar that we've set up. So we'll be doing that approximately on every month. I will be releasing information post-Frankfurt. We will be sharing with you on the live company site. I know there's not that many of you on the site, but we will be updating it throughout the day on Saturday and Sunday. And of course, you can always look at the kpop.flex site. There we have obviously our own cameras there, our own photographers, and so there you will be able to, even if you can't come, you'll be able to get the taste and feel of what we're going to do. I actually believe that doing the first one is super important. It's super important that the artists go back to Korea, and there are, including the SBS filming crew, etc. There are 287 tickets issued on Korean-based airlines to come next week. So that's a lot of tickets and a lot of interest from Korea. I think also we, working with Name, our PR people, we have a lot of interest from UK-based press who want to come and understand what this is all about. So hopefully you will see in our own British tabloids and newspapers, you'll see coverage of what's gone on. So I'm very proud of what we've achieved. Brick Live, boy, that's going to come back in a full way. There is so much interest now in what we've announced as a plan. I think that's going to do well. And of course, as you know, we are very, very far down the line in our Formula E activities. So I'm really, we're overwhelmed by the amount of work, and I'm very, very grateful for the shareholders' support. I'm delighted that we've seen some movement in share price, but as I said earlier on, that's just, in my view, the beginning. And I hope that when I next see you, which will be, I guess, towards the end of May, that we will be able to look back and say, wow, what a busy month.
That's great, David, Nicola, Sarah, thank you very much indeed for updating investors this afternoon. Can I please ask investors not to close this session, as we'll now automatically redirect you for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that David and the team can better understand your views and expectations. This may take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of Live Company Group, I'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation, and good afternoon to you all.
Thank you very much.